She sold her wedding gold to save my life. 15 years later, I let her drown in debt without lifting a finger.
Tell me something, Ada. If I had died instead of selling that gold, would you have remembered me then?
Please, don't say that.
Why not? You remembered the surgery. You remembered the life it gave you. But somehow, you forgot the person who paid for it.
I was going to help when?
Before I lost my stall? Before I lost my land? Or after there was nothing left to save?
I never meant to forget.
Nobody ever means to. Do you know what hurts the most? It wasn't losing the gold. It wasn't losing the stall. It was learning that the child I saved had become too successful to remember my name.
My name is Ada. And this is the biggest mistake I ever made.
She sold her wedding gold to save my life. 15 years later, I let her drown in debt without lifting a finger. I told myself I was busy. I told myself it wasn't my problem anymore. I was wrong, and karma does not forget what we choose to. My name is Ada. I grew up in a small compound on the edge of Enugu, the last of 5 children, the one nobody expected much from. We were not rich. My father drove a commercial bus, and my mother sold a kara by the roadside before the sun was even fully awake. When I was 19, I fell sick, the kind of sick that empties a family's savings and still isn't enough. The doctors said surgery, and soon. My mother sat outside the hospital ward for 3 days, doing arithmetic in her head that never added up. That was when my aunt, Neyefi, a widow who sold peppers in Ogbete Market, did something nobody asked of her. She took off her wedding gold, the only thing her late husband had ever given her, and sold it in secret so I could get the surgery I needed. She never asked me to repay her. She never even brought it up again. I lived. I grew. I left the village for the city, built a business, built a name for myself, and somewhere along the way, without ever deciding to, I built a wall between myself and the woman who saved my life. By the time you finish this story, I want you to ask yourself one question. Who saved you, and when last did you say thank you? Before I tell you what I did, you should know who Neyefi really was. She married my uncle Emeka at 22, a quiet bricklayer with rough hands and a gentle voice. They had 4 children and almost nothing else. No car, no land of their own until years later, no savings beyond what they could bury in a tin under the floor. What they had was a marriage built on small kindnesses, repeated daily, the kind that don't make for exciting stories but make for a good life. When Uncle Emeka died of a fever that the village clinic could not treat in time, he left her exactly one thing of value, a set of wedding gold, bought slowly over their first 3 years of marriage, one small piece at a time, as a promise that even a bricklayer could give his wife something beautiful. Neyefi wore that gold to every wedding, every christening, every burial for the next 11 years. It was not jewelry to her. It was proof that someone had once planned a whole future around her. So when she took it off and sold it for me, a niece, not even her own child, she was not giving away metal. She was giving away the last physical memory of a marriage she never got to finish. And she did it without telling a single person, so that no one could talk her out of it, and so that I would never feel the weight of what it cost her. I did not learn any of this until much later. I only knew, as a sick 19-year-old, that somehow, impossibly, there was suddenly enough money for my surgery. To understand how I could forget a debt that big, you have to understand what those years did to me. Lagos does not wait for you to catch your breath. I started as an apprentice in a small fabric shop on Balogan Street, sleeping in a storeroom, saving every naira I could. Within 4 years I had my own stall, within 8 my own shop, within 12 3 shops and a small factory that printed Ankara for export. Every success came with a new phone number, a new circle, a new version of myself that felt further and further from the girl who once lay in a hospital bed in Enugu. I sent money home, school fees for my younger cousins, a new roof for my parents, a generator when the transformer in the village blew for the 3rd time that year. I was generous. People called me a blessing to the family. My father would tell his friends, "That is my daughter," with a pride that made me chase more of it. But generosity, I would learn, can be selective without you ever noticing. I never once sent anything to Naifi, not because I decided against it, because I never thought of her at all. She had become a memory filed under old debts, the way you file away a childhood illness once you're no longer sick. My cousin Chidinma tried to remind me gently at a wedding 2 years before everything happened. We were standing near the drinks table, and she said, "Ada, have you seen Eneafi's stall lately? It's smaller than it used to be." I said I would visit soon. I meant it in the vague way people mean things they never write down. I never visited. I sent Asubi money for that same wedding instead, thousands of naira on fabric I would wear once, and told myself I was being a good relative. That is the strange arithmetic of a guilty conscience. It lets you feel generous while the one person who deserves your generosity most keeps sinking, quietly, out of view. The harmattan that year was brutal. Dry winds cracked earth, and in Ogbete market, an electrical fault that started at midnight and finished by dawn. 41 stalls burned that night. Naifi's was one of them. She lost everything, her peppers, her scale, the small wooden bench she had sat on for 23 years, the photograph of her late husband she kept taped inside her cash box. At 61 years old, with no husband, no pension, and children who had their own struggles, she had one option left: borrow. She went to a man named Chief Obialor, a moneylender known across 3 villages, for 2 things: fast cash and faster punishment when the cash wasn't repaid on time. He gave her enough to rebuild, at an interest rate designed to make sure she never actually could. My cousin called me. "Ada, she is asking for help. Just a small amount, to clear the first installment. She saved your life, don't you remember?" I remember exactly what I said. "I'm traveling for a supplier meeting, let me call you back." I did not call back. Word reached me a second time, and a third. Each time, I found a reason. The real reason was simpler and uglier than any of them. I had let a woman who saved my life become someone I could postpone. 3 months later, Chief Obialor's men came for the land. Not the stall, the land. The small plot behind her house where she had raised her children, and, before that, where her husband had been buried. She lost it in a single afternoon, while I was in a boardroom in Lagos discussing which font to use on our new packaging. The other traders at Ogbete market watched it happen and said nothing, because that is what fear does in a market where everyone owes someone. Mama Chica, who sold cloth 2 stalls down, later told my cousin, "We all wanted to help her. But when Chief Obialor's men come, even brave women grow quiet." Naifi herself never once called me directly. Chidinma told me later that when she suggested it, Naifi had simply shaken her head and said, "A child should not have to be reminded to remember." I found out on a Sunday, not from Chidinma, not from the village grapevine, from my mother, who does not raise her voice and did not need to. "She sold her gold for you, Ada," she said, each word landing slow and deliberate, "and you could not sell your pride for her." I sat in my car outside my own shop for 40 minutes after that call, engine off, air conditioning off, sweating in the Lagos heat because I could not make myself move. I thought about the surgery. I thought about waking up from it, 15 years old and terrified, and seeing Naifi's face before I even saw my mother's, because she was the one who never left the hospital corridor, the one who fanned me with an old newspaper when the ward's single ceiling fan broke. Around us, people in the village had started to talk. Not loudly, village judgment rarely is. It moves through greetings that grow shorter, through eyes that no longer meet yours at the market, through a silence that says more than any accusation could. Someone had even stopped Chidinma to ask, "Is it the same Ada we all celebrated? The one Ane Ifi saved?" That night I did not sleep. I drove through the dark roads from Lagos to Enugu, 7 hours radio off, replaying 15 years of small forgettings that had added up to one enormous betrayal. I found Naifi sitting outside a borrowed room at first light, thinner than I remembered, her hands still smelling faintly of the peppers. She no longer had a stall to sell. She looked up at me, not with anger, which would have been easier to bear, but with a quiet, unshaken calm that broke me more than any accusation could have. "You came," she said simply, as if she had never truly doubted that I would. That single sentence undid me completely. I knelt in the dust in front of her, in my city clothes, and I apologized in a way I had never apologized to anyone in my life, not for what I had done, but for everything I had failed to do. She let me speak. When I finished, she took my hand, the same way she had taken it 15 years earlier in a hospital corridor, and said, "Gold is only gold, Ada, but a child who lives, that is worth more than any land Chief Obialor could ever take." I asked her why she wasn't angrier. She smiled, the first smile I had seen from her in years. Anger would not have rebuilt my stall, and it would not have brought you here. Patience did both. I told her I had been ashamed to face her. She shook her head slowly. "Ada, shame kept you away for 3 months. Imagine what love could have done in 3 days." We sat together outside that borrowed room until the sun was fully up. That was when I understood. Karma had not punished her for lending me her gold. Karma had been waiting, patiently, to see what I would become once the debt was mine to remember. I went to Chief Obialor myself the next morning. He named a price meant to humiliate me for coming late. I paid it without blinking, because some debts are not measured in money. They are measured in who you choose to become when you finally remember them. Word later reached me that Chief Obialor's own fortunes turned within 2 years, a court case over another seized property he could not talk his way out of, brought by relatives of a widow braver than most. The elders said it plainly at the next town meeting. What a man builds on other people's suffering rarely stands for long. I rebuilt Neefi's stall, bigger this time, with a proper roof and a real scale. I rebuilt the land behind her house, and I made sure in writing, witnessed by the whole family, that it could never again be taken from her. But the real rebuilding happened somewhere else, in myself. Neefi never once said I told you so. She never needed to. Her forgiveness was the loudest lesson of all, louder than the guilt, louder than the shame, louder than 15 years of silence. I visit her every month now. Last year I brought my own daughter with me for the first time, and I watched Neefi tell her the story of the gold, exactly as it happened, without a trace of bitterness in her voice. The elders in my village say a debt of the heart collects its own interest, paid in shame if you delay it, paid in peace if you don't. I paid mine 15 years late. I am grateful even now that life gave me the chance to pay it at all, because not everyone gets that chance before it's too late. If this story moved you, ask yourself honestly, is there someone in your life still owed a debt of gratitude you've been meaning to pay? Don't wait for a fire, a phone call, or a Sunday morning conscience to force the lesson on you. Pay it now, while you still can. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe for more true-to-life African tales of family betrayal and the karma that always finds its way home. Tell me in the comments, who is the Neefi in your life? See you in the next story, and please like, share, and subscribe.